I'm Gaea Schoeters. I'm an author of, I would say, maybe all kinds of texts. I write children's books, novels, screenplays, theatre pieces, and I also write for opera, because at a certain point I found out that nobody was still writing for opera, and I thought if nobody is, it's a good idea to maybe write for opera as well. Today I'm here to present my two latest novels. The first one is Trophy, and it's a novel about a bit an atypical subject, great game hunting in Africa. And to be really honest, I never thought that I would ever write a novel about great game hunting. I actually stumbled across the subject when I read a small piece on Facebook where it was written that somewhere in Pakistan, actually you could hunt a small and rather rare species of ibex, and that with the money that you paid for the hunting license, a program to support and protect precisely the same kind of ibex was actually supported. And I scrolled on, and it took me a bit of time to realize, wait a minute, what have I actually read? I mean, it's completely absurd that the money that you pay to kill this endangered species is then used to protect it. And that's when I started to research the subject of trophy hunting, and I was completely fascinated and decided that I wanted to write a book about it. As I was sort of in the middle of writing Trophy, I realized it's actually not a book about hunting, but it's a book about white gaze and about our so-called post-colonial white gaze on the African continent and our relations with this continent. And I must say it happens to me more often that I think I write a book about a certain subject and it turns out to be a book about something completely different. And in that way, I think many people probably feel sort of a resistance to picking up these novels because they think, who wants to read about hunting? Who wants to read about trophy hunting? Well, actually, it isn't a book about hunting. It's a book about white gaze, post-colonialism, and maybe also about masculinity. Because the protagonist, Hunter White, travels to Africa to hunt a black rhino. And the reason that he does it is that he wants to sort of relate to nature again, that he wants to feel his own physical force again. And so it's also about exploring this character. And then comes, of course, the second question. Why do you write about this kind of character? Because I must admit, Hunter White is maybe not the most sympathetic character. Well, that's precisely why I write about him. I'm always fascinated by characters, by people who are completely different than me, and with whom I would in real life probably get into a discussion quite fast. And I think it's important to write about this kind of characters because it brings us closer to one another. If we stand in a corner and think that we are the only ones who are right, the conversation cannot start. And I think that literature is, and especially fiction, is precisely the kind of, I would maybe call it a safe space where we can discuss things which are difficult or maybe painful to discuss in real life. So actually, I think that's what Trophy can do. It can open all these discussions about colonial, post-colonial prejudice that is still in each of us and that we can discuss in a rather safe fictional environment by this novel. On top of that, it's actually written, and I did that on purpose, as a rather fast thriller-like book, which traps the reader into the perspective and the focalization of this white hunter, and sort of seduces the reader into his own prejudice, and then, by speeding up the action in this thriller-like structure, takes the reader to a point where suddenly we realize, God, have I been following the thoughts of this character for this long in this novel, and what does this say about me? And if by now you think, that all sounds rather heavy, well, that's what I thought after spending 3 years with Hunter White. And that's why I wrote Het Geschenk, The Gift, which is a novel which is thematically partially related to Trophy, but in a completely different tone. In Trophy, a European or a Western element, because it's an American hunter, travels to the African continent, and that turns out to be a tragedy. In The Gift, an African element comes to Europe, and that results in a political satire or maybe a tragi-comedy, if you want. Because, and this really happened, the president of Botswana actually offered Germany 20,000 elephants because Germany had made the law for the import of ivory more strict. And Botswana said, good, if you're so worried about the status of the elephant, and the elephant is an endangered species, we'll just give you 20,000 of them on one condition: they have to live freely in Berlin. And I remember sitting on a German train when I read this in the newspaper, and shortly after that I had a radio interview, and on this interview I heard myself say, wouldn't it be a great opening scene for a book if the German Prime Minister wakes up in the morning and he looks out of his window and elections are coming closer and the extreme right party is doing really well, and he looks out and 20,000 elephants are standing in Berlin. And at the moment that I said it, I thought, oh God, I shouldn't have said this out loud, because if one other writer is listening to the radio now, the story will be gone. But luckily it seems German authors don't listen to the radio, so I could still write The Gift, which is a political satire on 20,000 elephants in Berlin. That being said and done, I would like to use the last couple of minutes that I have to say something about niets, which actually means nothing or something, and which is a philosophical children's book, which I made with illustrator Gerda Dendooven, and because she's so great, I will just show you some of the images. And it's very hard to tell you what this book is about, because actually it's about nothing. And nothing can actually be everything, because in nothing, nothing is defined and everything is possible. Therefore, I think it's a book that you should just explore yourself. I think that sort of sums it up. If there's anything I forgot or anything that made you curious, I would say write me an email. I'm probably on either a motorbike in the Himalayas or a train in Germany or God knows where else, but normally I do answer, and I'm really willing to answer any question concerning my work. Thanks.